why don't we move on to the wide receiver rankings? Because these are also very interesting. So I'm just gonna start off with my number one and work my way down like I did with the running backs. So number one, I got Justin Jefferson. Number two, I got AJ Brown. Number three, Jamar Chase. Number four, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Number five, Malik Neighbors again. And if he's out, I don't know. But like if he's in, he's a top five for me. Number six, I'm gonna go Drake London again. Number seven, Debo Samuel. Number eight, Zay Flowers. Number nine, Chris Godwin. 10, I got Terry McLaurin. Number 11, Jaden Reed. 12, I got T. Higgins. 13, Stephon Diggs. 14, Deontay Johnson. And then number 15, Garrett Wilson.
I can go and read off mine. Number one I have is Jamar Chase. We ranked him one last week. While he didn't have, I'd say, the best week, he didn't have a touchdown or anything. He's still Jamar Chase, and he's one of the best in the game. Wanted to be highest paid for a reason. I got him at number one. Number two is the highest paid receiver, Justin Jefferson, the two LSU guys. It's really interchangeable, but I think they're one and two right now. Number three is AJ Brown. Came back from the injury, looked great against the Browns this past week. I got the same top five as you, Mark, just in a different order. So Jamar, Jefferson, AJ Brown. I have Amon-Ra at four, and similar to you, I have Malik Neighbors at five. I think as long as he's playing, as long as he's healthy, he's the top five wide receiver. Just stay away from Travis Scott, any loud concerts, and stay out of concussion protocol. Number six, I have is Debo Samuel. I ranked him kind of high this week, but he's really been one of the only focal points other than George Kittle. I know we're not doing a tight end ranking, but I would put George Kittle at tight end one. Right now, him and Debo Samuel are the only guys on the Niners really working. Seven is Zay Flowers, very high on Zay Flowers. He really proved it this week. He had his breakout game, if you will. Eight is Chris Godwin. Speaking of breakout games, I mean, 35 fantasy points is not something to snooze about or sneeze about. Nine is Jaden Reed. 10, I do have Drake London. I said it last week. Maybe he'll be in my top 10. I got him at 10. Probably should have put him a little higher. We're inching there. We're getting there. I don't have to face him again this year, so that's great. But I do have Drake London at 10. Garrett Wilson at 11. I have Terry McLaurin at 12. Stephon Diggs at 13. Devonta Smith at 14. I put both Eagles wide receivers on there, especially this week going up against the Giants. I don't think they have a great secondary. And then rounding out the list at 15, I have Cooper Kupp because Cooper Kupp is supposed to be back from an injury this week. And I think we're going to finally see Cooper Kupp at his best. He played really well in week one, got hurt. I think it was week two when Puka was already out. He's essentially the only wide receiver on the Rams. I would put him higher. I would put him top 10, but he really hasn't played this year. I'm hoping next week I can put him top 10, but he makes the list. He cracks the list at 15. So again, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, AJ Brown, Amon-Ra, Malik Neighbors, Debo, Zay Flowers, Chris Godwin, Jaden Reed, Drake London at 10, Garrett Wilson at 11, Terry McLaurin, Stephon Diggs at 13, Devonta Smith at 14, and once again rounding out the list is Cooper Kupp at 15.
Yeah, so I've actually made some audibles as we were speaking here. I like some of your points, both of you, but here's my list. It's mostly the same as what we discussed before, but here we go. Number one, AJ Brown. Number two, Jamar Chase. Number three, Justin Jefferson. Number four, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Number five, Devontae Adams. Number six, Malik Neighbors. Number seven, Zay Flowers. Number eight, Debo Samuel. Number nine, Terry McLaurin. Number 10, Drake London. Number 11, Jaden Reed. Number 13, Stephon Diggs. Number 14, Devontae Smith. Number 15, Cooper Kupp. I think I skipped a number in there, honestly. But Garrett Wilson rounds out the top 15. However, I want to give an honorable mention to T. Higgins, and just in case, I'm going to put Tyreek Hill in there as well.
All right,
Just in case.
fair enough, fair enough.
All right. I thought Drake London would be the biggest topic of the this show, but it seems like it's not. Devontae Adams makes Adams top, not Adams top five, Hunter's top five,
Yeah.
which is
I was
just
just cheering because we're not talking about Drake London, but yeah, top five for
which
Hunter.
is which is just absolutely wild to me. Hunter, could you explain Devontae Adams to us? I just need to know why.
All right,
I
here's
don't
the
think it's a
deal.
bad pick. I just need to understand it.
So this one is, I guess, my bold prediction for the guy who I think could finish as the top receiver for the week, which is crazy to think about because from 2017 to 2021 or 2022, he would be number one every week. But Raiders are obviously kind of in shambles right now. But Devontae Adams was out last week, the last couple weeks due to an injury. Um, but he tends to prey on bad secondaries as the as he's definitely a future Hall of Famer. And he's still relatively in his prime. Obviously, the QB situation is kind of weird over there, but he did really well last season when Aiden O'Connell was QB, I believe, and Aiden O'Connell was named the starter this past week. And he really didn't play that great, but he also didn't have Devontae Adams there. Now Devontae Adams, I alluded it to before, where Kyron Williams was going against the Raiders. That's a kind of not the best defense. Devontae Adams is going against the Rams. Not a great defense, not a good secondary. And the same reason for Kyron, someone who was great last year, definitely has a few opportunities this year to have really excellent games. And I think this is going to be the same case for Devontae Adams. It's really as simple as I can make it, honestly. The Rams secondary wasn't good last year, and they didn't really make many improvements this year for it. And to be honest, I was stunned that the Rams made the playoffs last year and played so well because I thought they'd finish with like 4 wins or something like that. And it seems like this year is what I thought last year was going to be. And I think Devontae Adams is really going to take advantage of that as the Raiders are desperate for a win.
That's fair. To me, Devontae Adams is someone I wish I could rank inside my top five because he's just such a talented player. And, like we talked about before on this podcast, he's just one of the best route runners like in all of the NFL right now, probably the best actually. But
He is.
when I look at the Raiders' offensive situation, it's kind of hard to really project what's going to happen, and it seems like Devontae Adams like doesn't really want to be in the Raiders right now. Now that's a whole nother topic in itself, but just to stick with fantasy, the offensive situation there is kind of at question, and his that is going to overall hurt his fantasy ceiling and floor. That's why I have a hard time ranking him even inside my top 15.
Yeah, a lot of the same reasons as you, Mark. Now, if Devontae Adams were healthy and were not requesting a trade and there weren't off-the-field issues, I think we would be having a different conversation altogether. But I can't rank him in the top 15, plain and simple, because of those two reasons. He hasn't been healthy, number one. And number two, off the field, he wants out of Vegas. I feel like there's a lot of issues going on offensively, defensively, leadership wise. Antonio Pierce should be the answer for the Raiders, and he has done a great job there, but they're still not a great team. I don't find them to be even a top, or I think they're a bottom two, maybe even team in all of football out of all 32 teams this year. So, I was going to say top 16. I don't find them to be, you know, at that halfway mark. But offensively, it's really been a problem. We're already on the second quarterback. Around this time last year, Aiden O'Connell came in for Jimmy Garoppolo. Same thing now. Gardner Minshew comes out. Aiden O'Connell comes in. They need a new quarterback. I don't think it's time to fire the head coach. I think, like I said, Pierce has done a good job, but they got to fix a lot of things. And Devontae Adams, like I said, he's great, and I hope he finds a way to get healthy or find a way onto another team where he can contend for a championship. Because I agree, I think this guy's going to be a Hall of Famer one day. He's a great talent, like you said, one of the best route runners, an elite route runner. Got great
Yeah.
hands, great speed, but at the same time, like I just can't rank him because he hasn't been healthy. And even when he was healthy, I know it was with Gardner Minshew, and I'd like to see him under AOC, but he still wasn't putting up the points. So we're still kind of waiting for that breakout game. And now they're saying he may not get traded. There's just a lot of unanswered questions in Vegas. And until he's healthy, until he's a breakout player or having his breakout week, which may come this week if he's healthy and playing, I'll rank him because he is top five. I agree with you. It's just that I can't rank him because of those two reasons in the meantime, but I hope that changes next week.
All right. So the next player, I don't really want to I don't want to stick on the topic too much because we seem to talk about him a lot on this podcast, but I actually have Drake London ranked
Uh,
4 spots ahead of both Hunter and Adams, so it is something we need to mention because, like I said on this podcast, we're going to talk about our biggest differences, so that's what we do. Um, my reasoning with Drake London still being top six, overall, like on fantasy week, he actually wasn't even in the top 10 for fantasy point production, but he still gave you 19.4 fantasy points, and that's still really good. And that's kind of like the safe floor he's been giving you. And for those people who don't know, Drake London's actually been the wide receiver 8 through 6 weeks now. And I don't think anyone thought that was going to happen. I drafted him to be a high upside player, and I thought he might be inside the top 15 this year, maybe top 20 because of Kirk Cousins, but I did not think through 6 weeks he'd be top 8. And seems it was a good pick for me to take Drake London. Now, when I watch the Falcons play, it just kind of seems like that Drake London really has now become the number one target on the Falcons offense, and he's actually second in receptions out of any receiver in the entire year. He's also top 10 in receiving yards as well. So it seems like that this is just going to be the year where Drake London does hurdle the 1,000 yard receiving mark. So that's why I got him inside my top six. He goes up against the Seattle Seahawks. I think the Falcons are going to try to find a way to get him involved. That's all I have to say.
I could go. Drake London, last week I had him, I don't remember if I had him off the list or at the very bottom, 15, 14, more of a personal bias, but I was generous to Drake London this week. I included him at top 10. I think you're absolutely right, Mark. I think he could eventually be bias aside because he hurt me last year in fantasy without obviously Kirk Cousins, and he hurt me this past last week. He went off. If he continues to do this week by week, then I think yes, top five, top six is a fair rating or ranking for him. But right now, still, I got him at 10. So again, I was generous with him. I think the reason why, two reasons actually, I had him at 10. I just think there's better wide receivers going into week 7, and that's with injuries, matchups, a lot of different reasons, and we can go through them on another day or reread our rankings at the end of this. So that's the first reason. I just think, I'd rather have that top five of Jefferson, Jamar, AJ Brown, Amon-Ra Neighbors, like those guys. And then I like Debo, even though it's against Kansas City. It's a tough matchup. But for me, I have him at 10. I think they're absolutely going to find a way to get him involved. The only reason I don't love the matchup with Seattle is double coverage on the Seahawks secondary, and the Seahawks secondary I happen to like really. They're really good. I think they're a really talented secondary, and they'll find a way to stop him. Now, I still think he'll have a great game. I just don't know. I think the Falcons will win this game. I just don't know how I feel about Seattle in the passing game because I think the Falcons also have a really good secondary. But I think this is going to be more of a running game. I like to see Kenneth Walker, Bijan Robinson next week in this matchup. I don't love receivers like DK Metcalf, which is why I held him off the list. He also didn't have a great week this past week. Drake London, like I said, he's been really good. He's looking really good. I think I'll have a good week, but double coverage on that Seattle secondary is tough. And I just think there's 9 better receivers this week. As simple as that.
yeah. Last couple points were exactly my thoughts. The Seahawks secondary, I'm a big, big fan of, especially when Reek Woolen is healthy. He was out this past week. I don't know what his status yet for this upcoming week is, but hopefully things work out for him because he is a crucial part of that secondary, and he'd be someone that could really shut down Drake London a bit. Same with on the other side for corners, Devin Witherspoon, monster rookie year, and he's off to a good start in his sophomore campaign. I still think Drake London will have a solid game. Yeah, that's why I ranked him. What I rank him like 8, something like that. One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight, nine, 10. Yeah, 10th. So I still think he'll have a solid day, but I think like 13, 14, 15 points somewhere in that area would do the trick. Um, but I do like what Adam said. That was the point right where he said before. This is kind of a running back showdown here. Ken Walker versus Bijan Robinson. That's a fun one. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't think I don't think Raheem Morris and Mike McDonald are saying, "Oh wow, everyone thinks it's gonna be a running back matchup. Let's just hand it off to our top 10 running backs the whole time." But I could see this potentially happening. Kirk balled out 2 weeks ago on it was either Sunday night or Monday night. But he was kind of kept a little quiet against the Panthers, which is really surprising. And Seahawks are definitely better than the Panthers are. So I don't really know how to react to that, but I could see them running the ball a little bit more, which is why Drake London's numbers might drop a little bit. But I think I still have a solid week.
That's extremely fair. I
Agreed.
agree. I agree with you guys' points. To me, I just think he's had double-digit targets for the past 3 weeks now, and I don't think they're just gonna not throw to him anymore because like I don't know, simple as that. And he also has 4 touchdowns on the year, which I'm pretty sure he's also like top 5 in touchdowns as well. So he's been producing in the red zone. He's been producing just simply by getting the ball thrown to him. So to me, I think he's a safe pick. Plus, he's already went up against tough defenses like Kansas City, and he still put up 15 plus points against them. He also played against Philadelphia. Tampa Bay is not the greatest secondary, but like they're also an extremely high scoring team. So to be able to go toe to toe with them, I just kind of believe in the Atlanta Falcons offense right now. So we'll move on from that. I think another player I want to mention because he was in nobody's top 15 last week, but here he comes cracking the top 10. Zay Flowers. We all actually have him pretty similarly ranked. I'm actually one spot below the both of you guys, but I don't know. To me, there's not much difference between 7 and 8. But yeah, I mean, I look at the Ravens offense right now, and I've kind of thought at first that they were just going to be that run first team, and Zay Flowers is just going to be an extremely talented player to just kind of not be used because you got Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson just being the offense. But this past week, I mean, man, they really found a way to get Zay Flowers involved, and it definitely was, I would say, part of the reason why they were able to beat the Washington Commanders. And I think had they not really used him in the receiving game and even a little bit in the running game, like I don't know if the Ravens would have won this game. To me, I look at the Baltimore Ravens and they kind of needed to establish their passing game, but they seems like they finally did it. I mean, Zay Flowers is just easily their best playmaker on the receiving end of the team. So to me, that warrants a top 10 spot for me. And he just seems to get peppered with targets. And he was able to put up 100 receiving yards for the past 2 weeks. So what do you guys think?
All right, so Zay Flowers, when we first started this podcast, I feel like he was the main guy that we spoke about. And in the last couple of weeks, we kind of haven't really mentioned him, but now we're really mentioning him again because he absolutely crushed it on Sunday. He had career highs on, I think, in both receptions and receiving yards. So yeah, I definitely could see him really rising in the ranks, especially this week. Let's see. Who does he play? He plays.
The Buccaneers. They play the Buccaneers.
Okay, yeah.
Another high scoring game, probably.
Yeah, I did just say that I did rank Henry a little lower than you guys because the Bucks defense is pretty solid, but I think Zay Flowers, I mean, I think Derrick Henry could obviously get a pass for that, but I think Zay Flowers is really trending in that direction of where he could definitely do a decent job against Tampa Bay. It also depends on if Antoine Winfield is back for the game. I know he's injured right now, I believe. He's probably their best player in the secondary. Obviously he's not a corner, he's a safety, but he really He's a freak athlete, and he's one of the best players at his position. So, I mean, I'm definitely a fan of Zay Flowers for this week.
Yeah, I've been high on Zay Flowers all year, kind of to go off of Mark's love for Drake London. That's kind of the chance I took on Zay Flowers this year. He's been a great flex for me. I even named my team after him. April Showers brings Zay Flowers.
I took a chance
Um,
on him too.
I know you did, and I like it. I still don't regret the pick. I'm in a keeper league, and I took him. So basically, I might have explained this in prior leagues, but you can keep a player after the third round. So the first three picks you can't keep. Anybody on, so fourth, fifth, sixth, and so on, you can keep, but you only get three keeps for next year. So you start the year off with those players. Zay Flowers is my fourth round pick, and I'm going to be keeping him because I just want to build this team around a true flex, a true wide receiver two, and Zay Flowers is that guy. He's the wide receiver one on the Ravens, and against the Commanders. Commanders defense, we talked about them last week. They have a really good run defense, but if you have a receiver, and I'll just say this now, I'll put this on the record. If you have a receiver that's going up against the Commanders, you start them because their secondary is not good at all. And to start out the game, Zay Flowers, he had a catch for like 30 yards or 40 yards. He finished the first half with pretty much all the points. He finished with 22 fantasy points in my league. I think he
Yeah,
did all of that in the first half. He had over
yeah,
100 yards. That's 2 games in a row now. 100 yards in the first half. Didn't even have a touchdown, too, which is impressive. They were using him on running plays. He was all over the place, and the Commanders just couldn't stop him. And now against the Buccaneers defense, I think Hunter just said it, depending on if Antoine Winfield is coming back or not, I still feel like we might get the same production for him. We're seeing the best version of him right now that we've seen all year. 3 weeks ago against the Bills, they won that game, but he had one reception for 10 yards. The last 2 weeks, he had 7 receptions for 111 yards against the Bengals, and then 9 receptions for 132 yards, with averaging 14.7 yards per catch, and his longest catch was 44 yards, and that was the catch to start the game. I checked down on my phone, and he already had 5 points after the opening kickoff. I was doing that game at work, producing that game at work, and I mean, he's a big reason that I won my league or won my week this league. I messed that up. Won my matchup for this week in this league, in the keeper league, because he just Lamar again. He loves to run it, and he's got Derrick Henry to the right of him, or he'll keep it himself on RPOs, like I said. But if he's throwing it, almost always it's going to Zay Flowers. Occasionally he'll get a pass to Justice Hill. Sometimes he'll feed Mark Andrews or Isaiah Likely, Rashad Bateman a little bit here and there. But the most consistent target on that team will continue to be Zay Flowers. And right now, he is trending upward. And if he continues to do that, which I think he will against the Bucks, I mean, why not have him? I had him top 10, like why not? I think this is probably the highest that I put him all year in our wide receiver rankings. And if he continues to have a similar performance week by week, he might even be top six, top five, which is maybe bold to say, but like, am I wrong if he's putting up these numbers? So I just love him a lot this year, and I think he's still very young. I mean, this guy's in his second year out of Boston College. He was great in college. I think he could be really good for the Ravens should they make a playoff push and maybe even come out of the AFC this year.
yeah. I mean, to Adam's point, I mean, in the draft, in my fantasy draft this year, Zay Flowers, Drake London, and Rashee Rice were all three of my highest drafted players, and those are just, I kind of wish I could have gotten in on Nico Collins, but he's on the IR now, so I guess it wouldn't have worked out for me ultimately. But um, yeah, I mean, Zay Flowers to me, like, is a guy like I honestly want to rank higher, like even in the top five, because
I
to
agree.
me he's capable of like to me he's capable of being a wide receiver one in fantasy. But the problem is for me that he's on a Baltimore Ravens offense, and I feel like you kind of don't know what offense you're going to get. But to me, I hope, the past 2 weeks are just a trend where the Ravens start to really establish their passing game as well, and he can start to get more consistent production. So I think, you know, we can move on from that.
One more
Another,
thing, one more thing. If the
yeah,
Ravens want to be a contender, they need to not only run the ball the way that they're running it, but continue to pass the ball the way that they're going to pass the ball. And Lamar needs to continue to show off the arm. And if
exactly.
they want to have weapons that are going to get them, like I said, to the Super Bowl or so on, having a championship, get past the Ravens, excuse me, the Kansas City Chiefs, they need to have weapons on offense. And right now, Zay Flowers has been their most like you said, likely could go off one week. Mark Andrews could go off another week. Maybe Rashad Bateman has a great game here and there, but who's been the most consistent guy in the passing game? Zay Flowers. So if this team is going to contend and come out of the AFC potentially the way that we're talking about them, I think Zay is a major reason why, because good teams don't only run the ball, but they pass the ball very well as well.
Exactly. Um, Speaking of good teams that pass the ball, Chris Godwin, I think might be one of the biggest surprises for me. Just like in fantasy this year. I mean, I really thought that I know Chris Godwin is the type of guy I think that has gotten over 1,000 receiving yards, but to me, he's just kind of been shadowed by Mike Evans, in years past. But this year, like, Godwin's playing out of the slot, and he seems to just be he seems to just be the number one target on the Buccaneers offense. And with Mike Evans, possibly with an injury, I think Godwin is that type of guy that, I've ranked him inside my top 10 before already, but I think he needs to I need to respect it because, he was some guy I didn't draft this year. I actually avoided him, and of course I was wrong on that. So for that reason, he's a guy that I'm ranking inside my top 10. I see Adams got him at 8, but with Hunter, he's not even in the top 15, which is
Yeah.
interesting to me.
So, I don't know how to describe Chris Godwin and Mike Evans together. Like, I feel like every year it's one of them, it's usually Mike Evans that plays really well, and occasionally Chris Godwin's the one that kind of sprinkles in and is very consistent. But this year it seems like it's all Chris Godwin, which is really surprising considering Mike Evans, the first ballot Hall of Famer. Um, but who do they play this week? I'm sorry. It's they
They
play.
they play the Ravens.
Yeah, I mean the Ravens secondary. I'm a huge fan.
Nate
Huge.
Wiggins.
Yeah, that was my defensive rookie of the year
I
pick going
know.
into the
I
season,
know.
and
That's why I said it.
it seems to be kind of panning out. I don't know who's really stood out defensively.
Um, like
Can't-
rookies.
yeah. Is there someone obvious I'm not thinking of? Like it
It
might
wasn't
be
a very good class for
no,
like
it
defensive
wasn't.
play. It was a better off. I think this coming class will be better for defensive players than last. Like last year's class was more quarterback heavy and wide receiver heavy. This coming class, I think, will be. I think we'll have good quarterbacks and maybe a few good receivers. Not as good as this
Yeah.
past draft, but I think defensively we'll have a couple more playmakers. Um, I don't know why Cooper DeJean. I mean, he hasn't been that good. I don't know
He's
why
not
he's the first player to come into mind, but.
like
I
cornerback.
don't know. I mean, yeah, he might like Nate Wiggins might win this award. I'd have to research.
Travis Hunter.
Yeah, yeah, let's just give it to him.
Not even in the league yet, but we'll give him the award. Why not?
But yeah, I just I don't know. I can't trust Chris Godwin against this secondary that also features Marlon Humphrey and Kyle Hamilton. I mean, I don't have him in my top 15. Will I probably regret doing that? Yeah, but I still think he'll put up double digits in fantasy.
All right,
Mhm.
so just on your point, real quick, couple of the rookies who are just because we'll look at the odds real quick. We don't have to include this. If you want, we can. But 2024-25 NFL Defensive Rookie of the Year odds. Right now, Jared Verse is plus 225. I don't know if this is updated. October 8th, 2024. So it is updated. Um, Latu Latu is second. Quinion Mitchell is third. Dallas Turner fourth. I don't know why he's so low. I don't even know where he is on this list. Anyways, they have Dallas Turner, Tavondre Sweat, Byron Murphy, Kamari Lassiter, and Chop Robinson, just to name a few. I don't even see Nate. Okay, he's all the way down here. It's like third to last, right above Javon Bullard and Terry and Arnold.
All
So
right.
I don't know.
Good stuff. Um, Another player that I guess the last player I want to mention, that didn't even crack your guys' top 15. I got Deontay Johnson at 14. Um, he's playing against the, as the Commanders are playing against the Carolina Panthers are also playing against the Washington Commanders. So, I mean, both defenses are just not good. Um, I know the Commanders are 4-1, and they definitely deserve to be 4-1, but they're a team that doesn't really have that elite defense. Well, actually, no, they're 4-2 now, I should say. They just lost to the Ravens, and I mean, I think part of the reason why they lost because they don't really have a defense. And Andy Dalton has shown he's capable of generating some offense. And who's been the number one guy? Deontay Johnson. And I think he's honestly just going to do his thing against the Washington Commanders. And I see no reason as to why he can't get double digit fantasy points this week. So that's my reasoning for Deontay Johnson at 14.
Yeah, I left him off the list, only because kind of similar to what I was saying earlier, about I think a player who didn't crack the top 10. I don't remember who I was talking about, but I just think there's 14 other better receivers. But I will give you this, and this is a point I didn't think of, and I literally just said it. If you have a receiver going up against the Commanders defense or their secondary, you start him. So if you have him, start him. I think he's like a flex option. I don't know. Was he hurt? I don't remember. Um,
He put up 19 points this past week.
I don't know. I thought he was either questionable like going into the last week or whatever. Aside from that,
Oh, maybe, I
just
don't know, but he played.
yeah. I mean, I just like I'm looking at his numbers and I just feel like it's been very inconsistent. And also like maybe it's a little bit of I just don't love the Carolina Panthers. Like you can't deny the numbers and the statistics, but having a touchdown 3 weeks ago against the Bengals, 7 receptions for 83 yards, a similar performance this past week against a really good secondary, and the Falcons with another touchdown, 78 yards on 6 catches. But then you look 2 weeks ago, like against the Bears, like didn't have a touchdown, very quiet week, 3 receptions for 23 yards. I don't know if he got hurt or injured in that game. Um, Also, I know this is like for going into next week, so maybe I could have included him top 15. Like I think he would have been you have him pretty low, right, Mark? You have him, yeah, you have him 14. So like I would have put him maybe 15. But the only reason I put Cooper Kupp in there, I snuck him in, is because like he is going to be healthy, and even though he hasn't really played, I think he's still worthy of that top 15 spot over somebody like Deontay Johnson. But just the inconsistency, I don't love the Carolina Panthers offense. Andy Dalton's like pretty good, but before that, Bryce Young, there's just a lot of issues, and Dave Canales has a lot of work to do, like I was saying a couple episodes ago. And also, if we're talking long term, like, all right, he might be a good start this next week against the Commanders. But like you said, Commanders are 4-2. Offensively, they look like one of the best offenses, definitely the best in the NFC East, maybe potentially the NFC, week by week. And defensively, they're good, but I think it might be a good start next week. Run For the run defense, Jonathan Allen is hurt. I think he's out for the season now. Their secondary is not great. I mean, he could have a similar performance to what Zay Flowers just did on the Commanders secondary. But then you look to next week, he's going up against the Broncos, which is Pat Surtain and that secondary. So not necessarily a good team, but I think it's just a matchups thing. I think he's going to be double teamed. I hope he has a similar performance to say Flowers, but the reason he didn't crack, like he would have been 14 or 15 if I were to rank him. I just think there's better players, kind of just as simple as that. But the reason I kind of snuck in Cup over him at 15 is just because I think we're talking about a top five receiver when healthy, and now he's finally healthy. Even it doesn't matter that he didn't play the last XYZ weeks, whatever, like he still deserves that 15 spot over Deontay Johnson. I know that seems kind of rude, but Cooper Kupp is that good. I want to rank him higher, but I can't because he's been hurt. But I think he was deserving of that top 15 spot.
Um, yeah, I guess just segueing into Cooper Cup. The reason why I don't have him in my top 15 is simply because of last year when he came off of his hamstring injury. He just didn't look good. Like after he came back, I think he had like one good game, and then the rest of the season, um, yeah, it was just like kind of up and down. If you were a Cooper Cup owner last year, you're kind of just holding on to him and whatever. And this year, like he got injured in week 2, and they didn't even put him on IR, but he was out for 5 weeks. Like that's a long time. Like that is quite literally enough time to have been put on the IR, and they didn't put him on the IR. Um, Cooper Kupp is someone that I think is a really good wide receiver and, is a top 10 wide receiver in the NFL. But if we're talking about fantasy, I'm just not ready to put him inside my top 15 yet until he shows me that he, you know, is going to come back in the NFL, play, and actually be healthy while playing and not look like he's dealing with some type of injury while he's on the field.
I'll just say this. The next six matchups for him, Raiders this next week, I think, again, well rested, 4 weeks. You're right. Could have put him on the IR. They didn't. Coming off the bye. I'm not high on the Rams this year, but like they need a saving grace and they need anything on offense. Could be Kyron Williams. It could be, again, Puka's still hurt. He's on the IR. Like they need anything right now. And he eventually, like, he comes in and he just gives them that spark. So Raiders this next week, I think that's a positive. Vikings the week after, that's going to be a tough matchup for him, but I think he can exceed. I think he can do well. Seahawks is going to be tough. We talked about their secondary. Then he's got Dolphins, not a very good secondary or team all around. Patriots, same thing. I mean, what's his matchup? Christian Gonzalez, like he has very like it's a veteran matchup on a guy who's essentially a rookie because he was hurt all of last year, and then Eagles the week after. So Raiders this next week, Vikings, Seahawks, Dolphins, Patriots, and Eagles. And I don't think the Eagles are that great defensively either. That's why I have Malik Neighbors in my top five this next week. So out of those six games, I mean, the Vikings could be a tough matchup for him, but other than that, the Seahawks are the only one I'm a little bit concerned about. But I think, like he eventually will come in and give them that spark that they need. I mean, again, I don't see this team winning the NFC West. I don't see the Rams being a playoff team this year. But if they want to have any hope of winning a couple games over the next 6 weeks, like they could beat the Raiders, they could beat the four teams I just named. They could beat the Raiders, they could beat the Dolphins, they could beat the Patriots. I don't think they'll beat the Eagles, but I think they have a shot. I mean, anybody can beat anybody in the FCs, it seems like. So I don't see them beating the Seahawks or the Vikings, but Cooper Kupp is a big part of that over the next 6 weeks or so, which is essentially the rest of the season. I mean, give or take 7, 6, 7, 10 weeks. It's important to look at him in that 6 week window. And I think with four out of, or potentially five out of those 6 weeks, favorable matchups for him, I think he deserves a top 15 spot rest of season, and especially against the Raiders this week, coming off the injuries, well rested, coming off the bye. So that's just why I like him. I know you made a really good point on coming in last year after the hamstring injury and not doing as good and missing a lot of time. 5 weeks is a long time, but I think there's a lot of optimism with some of the matchups that they have. I think the schedule will kind of flip in their favor. Again, I don't see this team as a playoff team, but maybe there's a couple more wins that the Rams can get here that they wouldn't have gotten without Cooper Kupp.
Okay.
I'll chime in here. I was MIA for a few minutes. So we're talking about Cooper Kupp, obviously. The more I think about it, I think it's a great pick for him this week to be in that top 15. I can't believe we've gone a whole hour in this show without me mentioning Jameson Williams. No, I don't think he's going to be a top 15 receiver this week. However, you go back to that week one game where it was literally a showdown between Cooper Kupp and Jameson Williams. Puka goes out and Kupp gets like 15 receptions or something ridiculous. And now that he's finally back, Rams are dying for some sort of offense. I did just say that I think Kyron Williams is going to really have a nice game, but I also could see Kupp doing really well. I don't know if both of them are going to be amazing. If they're both amazing, Rams might put up 45 points, but I think it honestly could be more likely that Kupp has a better game. I'm not going to say that he's going to have 15 receptions, but he's going against a Raiders
Could have
defense that,
15 targets though. I mean, like,
yeah, he could
yeah,
have 15 targets.
very likely.
Him and Stafford clearly have a connection. He won Offensive Player of the Year for him just a couple of years ago and Super Bowl MVP. I'm not saying he's going to return to that
No.
level of player, but I could definitely see him having a really big week against the Raiders secondary that is really, really not anything special whatsoever. It's probably towards the bottom, if not the very bottom of the league. So I really could see Cooper Kupp really shining this week, plain and simple.
Yeah, I mean, going back to like me having Cup over Deontay Johnson, because that's how we segued into Cup. I still
Okay.
think it's a favorable matchup for Deontay Johnson against the Commanders. Like, I think he could still have a Zay Flowers like week, like what he did this past week against the Commanders. I just because of Cup's history and because he has been so good throughout his career. Like you talked about a couple of years ago, being Offensive Player of the Year, Super Bowl MVP. Like, I just feel like for that reason having that experience on a very bad Raider secondary, he slightly has the edge over Deontay Johnson, but it is close. Like I said, I would have Johnson right off the list at 16.
All right. I think that kind of rounds it out for me. We talked about all the players that we are kind of different on, so that's really it for me. Anything you guys want to say?
I'm good. Best
I
of luck to
guess
your teams.
one last person, I mentioned him as an honorable mention. I said T. Higgins. First 2 weeks he was out with an injury, but really since then he's really been a big target for Burrow. Not as big as Shamar, but last game he was. And the game before he had 2 touchdowns. Jamar also went off, but I really look forward to watching T. Higgins the rest of the season. Who do they play?
The Jets, or no?
They play the Cleveland Browns.
Browns. Yep.
Cleveland Browns, they've been nothing special. Overall, I mean, we went into this year saying, "Oh, Cleveland Browns one first, second, or third best defense taken off the fantasy draft board," but they're probably available in a lot of leagues right now, and their whole morale is down mainly due to the poor offensive play. And I think T. Higgins could really take advantage of this whole thing for next week. So that's my last thing.
All right. Well, thanks so much for watching this video. Today we ranked our running back rankings, wide receiver rankings going into week 7. Also gave you a couple waiver wire pickups going into this week and talked a little bit about week 6. Best of luck to your teams this week. Make sure to follow us if you haven't followed us already on Instagram at Blitz Banter Pod and subscribe. It really helps out the YouTube algorithm at Blitz Banter Podcast on YouTube. Like some of the YouTube shorts, some of the memes, some of the rankings that we're posting on Instagram, and all of that content that's going to be coming out on a weekly basis. And thanks again so much for watching. Best of luck to your teams this week in week 7.